Welcome to a new episode of the MBSE podcast. Today we again have a very special guest. We have invited David Endler, and maybe you know David served for 2 years as INCOSE technical director and is a member of oose, like Tim, and an independent consultant and trainer in the field of MBSE and SE. He can give us excellent information about ISO 15288, as he is the lead editor for the current version or revision, as well as the lead editor for 24748-2, the guide to 15288. Welcome, David.
Engineering.
That was right my first job. So when I left university, I studied physics here at the University of Hamburg, and I was involved in a project at Airbus, which was back in 2002. So this year I'm having my 20th anniversary in systems engineering, because from the very first day on, I applied systems engineering to all my professional work. And in the meantime, so to say, also applied in some of my, so to say, private endeavors.
And how would you describe your current role?
My current role is that I'm working as a coach, as a trainer, or an independent consultant on systems engineering, doing some minor consultancy work, but now mainly giving trainings on systems engineering for people who either just want to get more proficient in systems engineering or want to get certified either to the INCOSE standard or to the SE cert standard, which was developed here in Germany.
Mm-hmm. And well, as a freelancer, how do you ensure that you can provide benefits to your customers?
I'm always trying to be on top of things, so to say, which means that I'm trying to learn as much as possible. And as a freelancer, of course, I must, so to say, educate myself and be up to date. And this is by ensuring, so to say, for volunteer work, either for INCOSE or for ISO, just discussing with all of the experts in the area of systems engineering. So this is the way how I ensure, so to say, that I'm up to date in order to provide the maximum benefit for my customers.
Yeah, great. So, we are together here today mainly for ISO 15288, and we prepared some questions. And to all our live listeners, if you have questions for David, just use the live chat feature from YouTube, so you can ask questions and we will ask them to David. Yeah, David, first question. You're working or volunteering for ISO. How did you come to ISO?
That was a couple of years ago when I was serving as the technical director for the German chapter of INCOSE, and we had a very interesting talk or presentation at one of the national symposia from the GFSE, the German chapter of INCOSE, and it was introduced that there you can meet some experts to discuss, so to say, the current revisions or future revisions of systems engineering standards. So I volunteered through GFSE to become a member of DIN, which is the German national body for standardization. And and when I was just getting more and more involved, then INCOSE asked me if I'd be interested in becoming their technical director. So I said, okay, I'm a freelancer, so it's I can do either or, but I cannot do both at the same time, because I also must earn some money, So and then I said, okay, let's put it, so to say, on hold, the work for DIN and ISO. And after I served for 4 years in total on the INCOSE board of directors, so to say, I was just right in time to become involved again in the standardization work for the new update of 15288, which was then kicked off sometime last year. So there was a slight overlap, but it was still okay because I was already preparing my retirement from INCOSE, so to say.
So we just call it 15288, and sometimes we call it ISO 15288. But the full name is ISO IEC IEEE 15288. So, well, is it an ISO standard, or is it an IEC standard, or is it an IEEE standard? And well, who is ISO, and why can they publish standards, and who's IEC and who's IEEE, and how they're connected? So can you clarify that a bit?
Yes, of course. Although it's a lot of questions at the same time. Yeah. Well, okay, so first question, I guess, was who owns, so to say, the standard? So it's all three of those standardization organizations. They work together. So ISO is the International Standardization Organization, yeah, with a lot of different standards. IEC is a little more specialized, yeah, in terms of electronic committees, yeah, so which means they are more related to technical standards. IEEE as well, which is the Institute for Electrical and Electronics Engineers, or something like that. Yeah, please forgive me if I mix it up slightly, because we're just talking with those abbreviations normally and not exactly knowing what the abbreviations mean. However, all three of them, they now work together and they send their experts in order to come up, so let's say, with the most beneficial wordings for the end users. It is currently, it depends on how you do the counting. So the first version was developed in 2002, then it was updated in 2008, and in 2004, I guess it was adopted by IEEE. And so then the 2008 version was already with IEEE involvement. Then the 2015 version was the first one when it was ISO, IEC, IEEE. Yeah, so therefore, so to say, the counter was reset to 0, yeah, or to 1, which means that the 2015 version was the second revision, even though it was already the third or fourth, yeah, depending on how you count. And now it's the 2015 version is the one that is still up to date. So to say, the last one that was reapproved. And now we're working on the probably 2023 version. That's about the date when we expect that it will be approved in about March timeframe.
Mm-hmm. So to say 1 year from now.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, David. So maybe not everybody is familiar with the 15288 in depth. So could you give us a rough overview what the content of 15288 is?
Yeah, sure. So 15288 is on system lifecycle processes, which means that it contains all of those processes that you need as a company in order to build successful systems. So this comprises more than just technical expertise. So of course, you need to be very proficient in the way you're working and the way you're developing your systems. And this is the area we all know very well with the requirements engineering, with architecture definition, integration, verification, validation, and it ends with the disposal. So the full life cycle is defined in this standard. But again, this is not enough to be successful on the market. Yeah? So you also have to manage your systems in terms of technical management. So you have to apply something like project management processes, like technical planning, configuration management, risk management, decision management. So all of that must work hand in hand with the engineering activities. And in addition, you also need to be on the market, which means that no company that I know of has a depth of 100%, which means you need to acquire some systems or services that you need to build your systems. And at the same time, of course, you have to bring your systems to the market. So acquisition and supply are grouped under the so-called agreement processes. And then every company, even my company, even though I'm just, it's only me, working on several projects in parallel, which means that you have to have something like an overarching project management for all those different projects going on at the same time, which is a so-called portfolio management, giving priorities to different projects in your organization. You need to have something like knowledge management and quality management system. So in all of these processes, all together, they form what we call the organizational project enabling processes. And all of that is part of 15288. And this gives you a full overview of all the processes that you need in order to be successful on the market. So this is in brief what is contained in 15288.
Oh, that sounds quite large. So do you know how thick the document is, the specification document, the PDF, how many pages?
It's a little bit more than 100 pages, if I remember right. So the content is rather sharp. Yeah. So it is not the case that this really that you want to learn something about systems engineering. This is probably not the document you should go for. Yeah, because you need to have a lot of background information on why certain things are in there and how exactly it's meant to be. So it's not really a guide. But there's some other standards which do a much better job. For example, IEEE 12207 was the document that 15288 is based on, and this had a lot of more examples how to really implement, how to really do things. Yeah, until then, 15288, so to say, brought it on a next higher level.
Okay. Yeah. Just by coincidence, we have a very good question also on the same topic, so to say. So, one of our listeners asks, should very small entities adopt 15288, or should they better go to 29110? And how are those standards related? Are the same people behind it? Can you say something to that?
Oh yeah, sure. So it's not really exactly the same people behind it, but it is from the same working group within ISO. Yeah. So therefore, we have to pay a lot of attention that those standards are perfectly aligned, and it really depends on your organization. Yeah. So if you're used to adapting standards to your own organization, yeah, so then 29110 is perfectly fine. Yeah, it's a huge series of standards. Yeah, with several sort of say cases here. So depending on the size of your company and on the area you're working in, yeah, they have different profiles. I guess that's the right name. And then you have to pick the right processes out of that, and they are fully aligned with 15288. Yeah, so this is that works perfectly fine. If you have no experience, yeah, in how to tailor and how to adapt processes to your own organization, it probably is easier to use 15288 instead of 29110, because you have to find your way through. It's not really a jungle, those processes, but you have to be a little more experienced in how to adapt and how to tailor standards to your organization.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think you mentioned that the first version of 15288 was published 2004, 2002 or so. And was it completely developed from scratch, or is it a successor to another standard?
Of course, they didn't start from scratch. There's a lot of experienced people were involved in that time. So that was more or less, so to say, when I was just starting my systems engineering career. So I don't have the full background on how it really was involved. But the first one that I know of was MIL Standard 499, which was the first systems engineering standard that was out there. It was then developed and was an ANSI standard on systems engineering. So there was a lot of pre-work already done before. And 15288 was the first version, so to say, pulling together all of those different threads out there. And then finally, ISO convinced all of the other leading organizations to really participate in this effort. Like INCOSE, like IEEE and IEC, and they all joined forces for the 2008 version, which was then, so to say, the first one that was really, so to say, a common work within all of the different standardization organizations.
Okay, but what I don't really get is, why is 15288 so important for systems engineering? So, or ask the other way around, can I apply systems engineering without looking into 15288?
Definitely yes. Yeah. So this one just gives you, so to say, the framework for your organization. Yeah. It doesn't really tell you how to really, let's say, in detail apply model-based systems engineering or systems engineering. it describes more or less only the activities and tasks that should be implemented in your organization. Of course, if you have something that has proven to work in the past, yeah, it's all about tailoring, so to say. Yeah. Please never ever just take 15288 and say, oh, now we got a new standard process or development process. Yeah, this simply just won't work. So therefore, depending on on the history of your organization, depending on your culture, and a few other things, just look out for those chunks and parts that you see. Oh, we're missing something here. Yeah, then 15288 could really be a good benefit. But of course, we all know that in systems, typically everything interacts with everything else. So which means sometimes it's very difficult, yeah, just to cut out a few pieces, because all of that is somewhat interconnected. And in many cases, it just makes more sense to really adapt very closely to 15288. But at the same time, what I always tell my customers, make sure that you're using the right language. So it's your language, the language of your organization, and make it work in a way that your people will accept it. And therefore, sometimes it may take 2, maybe even 3 steps before you have fully implemented 15288. But I can imagine, because it's very, very general, a lot of companies out there already comply to 15288, maybe without knowing it. Yeah, so that's what I discover very often.
Mm-hmm. But is it possible that I, as a project, can prove that I work according to 15288? So are there any assessments and I can achieve 15288 level 3 or something like that, or certificates? And I think this could be important for tenders, for example, no? That it is requested that the company works according to 15288, things like that.
Yes, of course, and ISO is also building their own business case, so to say. Mm-hmm. Yeah, therefore they've put together another ISO standard on assessment of 15288 and 12207, which is, so to say, the other standard on software engineering or software system development. And this is 33004, yeah, from the 2015 version, which was just renewed 2020. So it is still valid, yeah, without any changes. And this gives you guidance on how to build all of those assessments and how to prove that you're working according to 15288. Yeah. So again, the number is 33004. Yeah, that's the one that you have to look up. And of course, you have to pay for that one again. And then you have to find companies. Yeah, there are many out there, typical suspects, I would say, that can help you in order to make this process assessment. And then you get certified as a company or as an organization that you're working according to 15288.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we already talked about the version 2008, 2015, and you already mentioned that the next version will be most likely be 2023. So can you give us some insights? What will the biggest changes of the new version?
Mm-hmm. As mentioned before, as a document exists already for quite some time, it's not really a revolution, so to say. Yeah, so there's no new processes were added, which always makes people very nervous. Yeah, when new processes are added, because then they are all of a sudden, yeah, you are certified according to 15288. Then there is a new process, and then you have to make sure that you align again with this the new standard. The only change, let me say, on this very high level was that one process was slightly renamed, yeah, from architecture definition to system architecture definition, which may seem that's pretty trivial and straightforward, but there was a huge discussion behind it. Yeah, so and can maybe if we can do that in another podcast, yeah, because it will fill at least one hour or so. But anyway. They say looking at as a user of 15288, of course, since the last version is from 2015, some other standards that are referenced by 15288 have been updated in the meantime. Yeah, like 16085, which is the standard on risk management. Yeah, and this one has been updated in the meantime. So therefore, changes done to this one were now also implemented in 15288. The same is true for configuration management and some other areas. And mainly it was then just, mainly minor changes, yeah, to some of the contents. Some of the things that we experience very often, because of course the editors on a regular basis, they get feedback also from the user community. And what we experience that very often, the concept of enabling system, interoperating system, and interfacing systems was not very well understood. Yeah, so therefore we also expanded this section. We gave some more explanation about the concept definition, yeah, the very early stages of a project. So all of that is non-normative. Yeah, these are just the informative clauses. For the normative clauses, yeah, there was I say only these minor changes, like adding logistics to the maintenance process as an example. Yeah, it's so to say in detail when you want to comply to 15288, there's some changes in there, but not too much. Yeah, so those organizations which are currently certified according to the 15288 processes from 2015, it shouldn't be a very big deal for them, yeah, to switch to the 2023 version.
That's good news.
Yeah, but probably something that you might be very interested in is that we have a new Annex D, which is also informative, which is some information on model-based systems engineering. Yeah, this is something that was that is new to this version. Some other stuff was then just kicked out because it was seen no longer to be that important, so to say. And this standard elaborates, yeah, on the benefits of following a model-based approach to do systems engineering. Yeah, it explains in more detail all of the benefits that you have from using a model-based approach. For example, in the very early stages, yeah, that you have a better traceability, that you have higher consistency within all of your data sets. So all of that is now included in 15288. Introducing or encouraging all of the companies to do all of their development model-based.
Yeah, I'm sure that was one of the big criticisms on the current versions, that you did not have a link to MBSE.
Does it provide a definition of MBSE?
In the very first sentence, yes, and I knew they were asking that one, but it's not something because Tim, you did some research and very defined, so nothing new, yeah. So it's still this one the same one sentence, and so to say we didn't dare as ISO editors or as editors of 15288. Let me say to start a huge conversation and discussion on the definition of model-based systems engineering.
Okay. I tried to have a look into the new standard and opened the ISO website, and there the new standard is already listed. And I saw that now there's another abbreviation added to the long name. So it's an ISO, IEC, IEEE, DIS 15288 standard. So what is the meaning of DIS?
DIS stands for Draft International Standard, which means that this one is now in draft. So it has gone through a so-called working draft stage. Yeah, so this was the very first one. So this is the stage where you can do, so to say, a lot of changes to the standard. Yeah, so you don't have to explain anybody. No, that's not really the case. But the editors have some freedom in order to introduce new material. All of that was based on a so-called ad hoc group. Yeah, so ISO put together an ad hoc group of experts and asked them, so please propose some changes to 15288 that reflect the current state of the practice. So the ISO standards, they always reflect state of the practice and not state of the art. Yeah, which means that everything that's, so to say, that's already well known in industry, that is what comes into the standards. So it's not that much future looking as maybe some other publications. Yeah, it really defines what is currently done by many organizations in the world. And from there on, so to say, then we attached the so-called working draft version with a lot of changes, or we implemented already a lot of the changes I just mentioned. And then it goes through the so-called CD phase, which are the commenting drafts, which are then sent out to all of the national bodies. Yeah, so here in Germany, that's DIN, and AFNO in France, and all of the others. then there's a voting behind it. Yeah, so there's a balloting, then you have comments, then you have to, as editors, we have to do the so-called comments disposition. So we have to answer each and every comment, yeah, either accept or accept in principle, defer, or we can also reject them. Yeah, but all of that needs to be justified. And then there's a huge ISO meeting again, where all of these dispositions are discussed, and then it moves on to the next stage. And BIS, so to say, is the second last one. Yeah, so after that, it's a final draft international standard, so-called FDIS. And there it's only allowed to do very minor changes, yeah, like some spelling errors and things like that, but no more technical comments. If you say, oh, I'm unhappy with the way how you treat MBSE, then we collect it, but it will be then for the next revision in 2031 or so.
And can anyone file an issue or change request, or is it only possible through the national bodies like DIN?
Yeah, so it's mainly for the national bodies like DIN, and of course the DIN representatives very often they are also asked to involve other experts as needed. Yeah, but they of course need to justify and make sure that those people do not distribute the document with everybody. And then there's also so-called liaison partners. For example, INCOSE is a so-called liaison partner, which means that they can provide comments, but they have no voting rights. Yeah? So they cannot vote, they cannot approve or disapprove the whole document, but they provide a lot of experts, and of course they have a certain standing in the in standardization and in their treatment on systems engineering in general. Which means that these comments are treated just like any other comment from one of the national bodies.
Okay, so if I'm interested in filing an issue or change request, I should ask my local chapter of INCOSE, right? And then they can help me.
Yeah, so within INCOSE, there's a so-called standards development department, which was founded or which was put in place at the time when I was the technical director, and they are organizing all of the reviews on the various international standards where INCOSE intends to participate in the commenting phase. So yeah, if you're interested, get in touch with the leader of the standards development department, which is currently Richard Martin from the USA. But his deputy is Daniel Siegel from Liba. So he's from Austria, at least German speaking.
Yeah, we already had Daniel here on the podcast.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and I remember he mentioned it. Yeah, right.
Yeah, so David, I guess you are not writing the standard alone. So who else is on this committee?
So when we started, it was Gary Rodler leading the whole effort. Probably a lot of people know Gary Rodler, and very, very experienced systems engineer. He's an INCOSE pioneer. He's an INCOSE fellow, and so he's a lot of. I'd say he's an ESEP. Yeah, so he sort of say he achieved all of the certificates and recognitions that you can achieve in your life as a systems engineer. And it is really a big honor for me working together with him. So he was leading the ad hoc team, together with Gerald Jones, also from the United States, and Bill Bearden, who at the same time is also a so-called convener in ISO, which means that he oversees all of the standards within the Working Group 7, which is the one on system life cycles. And Philippe Boiry from France. So it was a team, 5 of us. We developed this draft version, of course, based on a couple of ideas that we came up as a team, but also a lot of inputs that we received from an ISO meeting where all of the national bodies collected some ideas. So this is what we brought forward. And then we worked ourselves through the working draft, the CD1 and CD2. There were 2 commenting drafts out there. And then Gary decided, because he now retired from Lockheed Martin, and he said, okay, I want to get rid of, let me say, getting all of these involvements in INCOSE and ISO and everything. So he asked me if I'd be willing to take over as a project editor in order to ensure that all of his knowledge is transferred to the next generation. So again, it's a big honor for me to take over from Gary. At the moment, not really sure whether I can fill his footsteps, because this is really extremely hard. But it's really a lot of fun working with that team. They are all so experienced, and for me, it's like every meeting is just like waking up and say, "Wow, thank you for sharing all of that knowledge with me." And trying to learn as much as possible, knowing that in the next revision it might be me then leading others to the next revision of 15.288.
Wow. So, and another important publication in systems engineering is definitely the INCOSE Handbook. And if I open the INCOSE Handbook, well, it's full of process descriptions. So it looks like that ISO 15288 is also described in the handbook. And is it fully covered in the handbook, or is it an interpretation of the ISO standards? So what's the relationship?
So the INCOSE Handbook, the next revision, which will also then be published in 2023, of course, is fully aligned with 15288. And this is done by just ensuring that the same people that work on 15288 are also involved in working on the handbook. So Gary Roeder, he's also an editor of the INCOSE Handbook. And I was also just accepted as another editor of the INCOSE Handbook, the next revision, which will then be released, and I say probably a couple of months later than 15288. And of course, the description in there, it fully covers 15288 from all the processes that are described in 15288, but it also elaborates a little bit more on those processes. So it's got more than 400 pages, which it adds a couple of more details and descriptions and best practices and common approaches and tips, and all of that is also part of the INCOSE Handbook, plus some material that is not covered at all by 15288, like, let me say, in more detail about the so-called quality characteristics, like system safety and environmental considerations, and all of that was formerly known as the so-called IEEs, but today it's called more the quality characteristics.
So is it sufficient to read the INCOSE Handbook, or do I have any value if I also read the standard?
It depends on your use case, so to say. If you want to be compliant with the 15288 processes, there is no other way just to purchase 15288, because it's not really a one-to-one copy, because INCOSE doesn't have the rights to copy, so to say, 15288. They only may take the purpose of each process and then the activities, but not the tasks, which is the more detailed description of what exactly to do. And also 15288 has only the process outcomes, so to say, which is more general, whereas the INCOSE Handbook has a so-called process outputs. So there's a slight difference between outcomes and outputs. So outcomes, again, is more general about, okay, we have achieved the following, and outputs are then really documents, information items, and things like that. So a lot more detailed, like in specification or an interface document or whatsoever. So this is not covered by 15288. There it is more general.
Okay.
Okay. So, and if 15288 and the INCOSE Handbook is aligned, is there also an alignment between 15288 and the new INCOSE Vision 2035?
Well, the INCOSE version 2035 is very much future looking. So therefore, what I said before, 15288 is state of the practice, which means that the ISO standard is something like, let me say, 10 years behind the vision document, which is very much future looking and explaining, I say, what approach is necessary in order to achieve this vision, or at least to come close to it. Probably you cannot fully achieve it, but what needs to be done. But where all the things come together is, so to say, that the INCOSE vision also promotes a picture that we have to slightly change our approach to systems engineering as such, and in particular in the way how we educate our people in order that they become, more fit for their work, so to say, when they apply systems engineering. And there, of course, then there's a big overlap to 15288, because they will be working in this environment and with 15288 processes.
So I would say that was much information. And even Stefan Roth mentioned he again learned new abbreviations.
And a lot of new numbers.
Yeah, that's for sure. So the same for me.
Yeah. So this is really the case. Yeah. So when you I also have here kind of a list. Yeah. So after a while, you get more and more used to it. Yeah. To all of these abbreviations and all these new numbers. Yeah. And just in preparation for this call, which was also my first question when I was first involved. Well, what is the standard? How do you call it? Yeah. So is it 15,288 or is it 15,288 or just you don't want to be an idiot? Yeah. When you talk about that one. Yeah. So, but I can tell you, yeah, that just like in your slogan is, yeah, trust us, we're systems engineers. So you can do whatever you want. Yeah. So it's there's no big deal. People will understand what you're talking about, and you will not be say seen as somebody who's got no idea about this whole thing. I mean, you just sort of pronounce it in a slightly different way than others do.
Okay, so thank you, David, for being with us. I hope this was also very interesting for our listeners. So if you enjoyed this episode, think about giving us a thumbs up or subscribe to the YouTube channel to not miss any other episode. So what's next, Tim?
Well, it's not finally set. We have some ideas and we also have asked some potential guests, but it's not finally set. But we will do that very soon.
Okay, yeah. Tim, you will be on the next OMG meeting, so maybe you find our next speaker there? Yeah,
maybe. So it's in 3 weeks or so. Yeah, in 3 weeks in Reston, so near Washington. The second physical OMG meeting after the pandemic. So that will be quite interesting. A lot of SysML 2 stuff, of course. So almost every day, the whole day. SysML 2. Yeah, it will be quite interesting.
If you as a listener want to know more about SysML v2, give us a comment under this video so we know that also you are interested in SysML v2 and we can organize some more talks about it.
Sure. So, well, and then finally, do not forget.
Trust us. We are systems engineers.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.